Hello, students. Hello, this is Jack Downs, and I'm here with Class 9, which is Monday, March 1st, the 9th class of 127. For maybe the couple of you who might still be in quarantine or having testing problems, we'll see. Hopefully it's almost none of you by now. But in any case, I'll give you this information. It's not as good as being there in class, but it'll have to do. And as usual, let's start by sharing the screen and taking a look at the schedule, as you should be doing on your own regularly too. So here we go. Here is Moodle, and it's the schedule for today. There's a number of things I'm going to talk about today. Assigned group info organizational exercise. No, that shouldn't be there. Ignore that as far as the topic. There's a number of different topics though. And today, study guide 1 is due. Okay, if you aren't in class and you weren't able to hand it in on paper, it's going to be late if you don't photograph your pages, for instance, or scan your pages and send them to me in an email. Alternatively, you can hand it in next class on paper, but remember, then it will be marked late, which is I'll still accept it though. I accept late work to a certain point, certainly a few classes. So the study guide 1 is due. Also, I'm going to try to remember for anyone who's absent to send you a digital copy of study guide 2. It'll be handed out in class today. If you don't get one later today, send me an email to remind me. I'm asking you to read chapter 8, which is the first chapter in study guide 2. And I'm also asking you to practice and work on your entomology name presentation. It should be all your internet research, your interview with a family member, your reflection on the name yourself. That stuff should be completed. Plus, you should have built an introduction and conclusion and have worked it out on index cards at this point too. Remember, I told you if you need regular index cards. By the way, if you're ever in quarantine having trouble getting something, please let me know. I've had to bring something over to other students, silly little things that you think they could just ask for and get, like a pen. So you'd let me know if you don't have an index card and you need me to bring some over to a quarantine or something like that. So you should be, in other words, you should be ready to do the presentation, have practice them on your own, and you should either practice tonight, 5 to 7, or Tuesday night. Please don't everybody just come on Tuesday. The poor people who are stuck on Monday are sitting there with nobody to talk to. But whatever, do what you can, get practice in, and if you need to practice on Wednesday morning, let me know. That's the entomology name presentation. And if you have overdue presentations, like still, collage, and quotation, those need to get practice so you're all ready to go. And maybe do those on Wednesday also. And your advisor interview, you should have that pretty much wrapped up because it's actually due very soon now. I think it's due next class. We'll see in a minute. Here it is. Oh, by the way, I asked you to work on your SPS exercise. Oh, I should have that handy as far as when that is due. I don't have it in front of me, but we could look ahead in the schedule and see the SPS exercise is due on a week from today. That's Monday, March 8th. Yeah, Monday, March 8th, and you should bring it to class where we'll be using it. So that's a week from today, SPS exercise. And that will take a few minutes. It's really, you should be used to the idea. You've seen me in these videos, for instance, making the SPSs, the CT, the main ideas, typing them out. You're going to do that, but you're also going to label the SPS and give an organizational pattern for the CT. And you have to actually give 2 sources, remember? 2 sources that you really used, and you have to format them correctly, as it explains in the exercise. By the way, that handout is sitting there on Moodle waiting for you. I showed it to you in a previous one of these videos. It's there on Moodle, the SPS exercise. And then I'm asking you for next class to read chapter 9, the second chapter in the study guide 2. And you must bring your rubric to next class. Any time you're doing a presentation, you need to bring your rubrics which show that you've practiced. Entomology name presentation is next class. Yes, it is. And there's practice available tonight, Tuesday night, and potentially Wednesday morning if you have to get in touch with me for an appointment. And you should be started working on your study guide 2, and the advisor interview is due next class also. Advisor interview, you've had that for a long time now. I hope you didn't leave it to the last minute. It means that a lot of stuff's going to be happening on Wednesday or this week as a result. Long term, something that's not mentioned here, but I do occasionally mention, is the rhetorical analysis essay. Still not due for a while, but it'll surprise you when it comes up. So you get a couple extra minutes, go watch a TED Talk and look at those instructions and write an essay. That's about 3 pages probably. Okay, so that's the schedule. Any questions on that, please make sure to let me know. And I'm going to show you some handouts now, and I'm going to go through them. It's really not that effective for me to just read the handouts, but what can I do? There's some things I can't show you that easily like this on Zoom, but that's how it goes. And these handouts are all available on Moodle. The first one you have is available on Moodle in that first online weeks section, right? It's the originally it's the way back then. It's way back at the beginning. It says it is the communication apprehension handout, right? That was on your packets, which I hope you picked up. And it was the first thing we went over, all this communication apprehension. Remember, tagged at the very end of this is something I said we'll come back to, we'll talk about it later, and it is to use cards effectively. Because remember, for entomology presentation, you're going to need to have cards. You've done all this research, the note taking and so on, right? And you've thought about your introduction, how it's going to work. So what are you going to put on the cards? Well, first of all, let's look at the card rules here. I kind of went over these before, but I'll do it. I'm going to go over this again today, so I'll do it for you too. You never write out your entire speech, but you might write out the beginning words and other key words you want to make sure to get. And things like maybe if there's a particular sentence you want to make sure you get just in a certain way. And like the sources for things, you will write those out. So occasional complete sentences, never the entire speech. Other things like sources and so on that you need to refer to and get them right in a certain way. Yes, you do those, write those out. You should use regular white index cards. You end up holding them vertically and writing on them vertically usually. Ideally, they're blank and you only write on one side of the card, okay? You should number the cards. You won't have that many for this, but if you had more, you definitely want to number them. You should avoid holding them with both hands. Don't hold them with both hands. Your other hand has a job to do, right? You should not make more cards than you need, right? So remember, if you're only doing keywords and prompts, maybe a direct quotation, maybe a source, maybe a actual sentence from introduction and or conclusion, that's really not that many cards. Write legibly and big enough so you can read them. You should follow the framework of your outline. So you really will have Roman numeral number 1, and that'll be your main idea number 1. That'll be after your introduction though, right? And then number 2, number 3, within those, you'll do subpoints, like bulleted kind of points of notes you want to make sure, things you make sure to hit. You avoid writing too many complete sentences, but there will be a few. And consider writing an introductory sentence, yes. Certainly a quotation you might write out. Your clincher, if you have something special you want to say in a way to say it at the end. Give yourself cues for delivery. Like say, write on the card, smile, extra pause, underline words, some word if you want to hit with some emphasis or something, things like that. And I really want you to use real cards. So there's cards in the classroom, cards on my office door. And if you need other cards, ask me, I'll somehow get them to you. But I want you to use real cards. This is for entomology presentation, and then future ones too, and not like your own homemade cards. Although you can buy your own cards if you want. These are just blank 4x6 cards. And don't prepare your cards in class or do anything else in class when other people are speaking, right? That makes sense. So that's about the card and the presentation. Now I'll say that where I'm making this presentation, the cards for the presentation about my entomology presentation, what do I write down? First, I'd write intro. Well, I'd number that card number 1. And write on that, I want to say, in my intro, I want to say something like, do you think I'm a jack of all trades? Do you think I'm a jack in the box? How about a jackass? Oh, I hope not. So that's both a rhetorical question and it's kind of a startling statement to say jackass. So I kind of get both my attention getting devices right in there. I will write in here intro, and I'll write jack of all, jackbox, jackass, just those words. I'm not going to write, I could if I felt like I needed to, but I don't think I need to write out, do you think of me as the actual question portion? Okay. Also, what else? Then I might write down some kind of transition to get me from that and build to my name. And then I'm going to list very briefly with bullet points my main ideas, because I want those in my preview statement. I might even write the words I'm going to use. I might write like the word for talk. I might write we talk, we will discuss, we will review, and this then just one other word with it. So, but I'm not going to write the whole sentence I say in the signposted preview. There needs to be a signposted preview. It should be in the instruction. Then I'm going to write Roman numeral number one. Might be on the same card, or maybe I would move on to a new card. Okay, depending on how much space I had on this card. The introduction, you don't have to keep separate cards for each Roman numeral or something. Some people do it that way. So Roman numeral number one, I'm going to probably write some kind of just before some kind of a transition kind of word or a little phrase or a little bullet to try to make me move for. We'll start. And so let's begin talking about the history of the name Jack. And then I'm going to write in here some key facts and the source citation and some key facts, maybe with a direct quotation if I wish, and another source citation, and anything else I found in my research. So that could take up bullet points, sources listed. That could take up most of an index card. All right. So then I'm going to write Roman number two, and that's going to be the interview with somebody who knows me about how I got my name. So I should remember who it was I talked to. I shouldn't have to write that down because it's probably a family member. But I'm going to write down other stuff. I'm going to write down the general story, some key points in that to hit, maybe a direct quotation if it was a particular one. Then I wrote number three. Then I'm just going to write some bullet marks about my own reflections because I should be able to do that mostly just by doing it, right? Having thought about it. And then I'm going to write conclusion. And then now I'm probably up to card 4 or something at this point, maybe 3. And in conclusion, if I have some particular sentence I want to start the conclusion with, before conclusion, I'm going to make sure to write in there pause, but there should be a double pause. And then I'm going to write, after conclusion, I'm going to write maybe that particular sentence I wanted to do, which is going to link me back kind of around to the beginning. And then maybe some kind of a brief, different way of saying my main ideas that maybe I can say them all just in one sentence. We try to give them a residual message to take, right? And finally, a clincher if I come up with one. And I might actually write that out as a real sentence if it's a particularly witty, interesting wordplay kind of a thing I can find. But maybe I don't have one. Maybe I just kind of end there, and that's fine too. Okay, so that's index cards. All right, so what next do I want to talk to you about? Okay, I want to talk to you about some other handouts that you should know at this point. You need them for the study guide 2 and for really doing your work. And let me share my screen again and show you. I showed you this one, right? Yeah, that one. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Okay, beginning and ending your speech. This is the idea of introductions and conclusions. So we've already talked about this a little bit, but now you have the handout in it. I could go through this whole thing, but I do think I need you to go through it, and you're going to see how there's a lot more to an introduction than just getting someone's attention. In fact, probably the idea of getting attention is not that great of term. Probably instead you want to say we have to get it and keep getting it over and over again throughout. So it's not like you get it once and you're done. But we particularly it's important that we kick off with a way to get attention because it's a good way to get rolling, right? To really get them to look at you. If you get them in the beginning, more likely to stay with you through most of the talk. It does set the tone. It does really, we really have to make sure it really tells the group, the audience, the topic, right? And then this need to know idea, that doesn't apply so much for entomology, but for another presentation, informational presentation on a more general topic, you want to make sure people know that they would like to know it, right? So then we move on to the preview. Again, the preview, signposted preview statement. So it's going to preview that. The tips for the introduction, yes, the pause, get physically ready, smile, and really have a word set to start with. So you don't say, all right, yes, and so on. The other just verbal tics, verbal burps, or just other generic words like that don't mean too much, right? And you start with a real attention-getting device and not just some generic stuff. And when I talk in class, I walk around a lot. You know, I'm sorry, and I probably shouldn't as much as I do. During your presentations, you generally should not. It's certainly not during your introduction. Attention gain devices. Here's a longer, more complete list of them. Now, not complete. You could imagine more. I'm sure you could figure out some more. Rhetorical questions. I've already given you examples of those and done them myself, but we're not really going to ask for answers. In fact, none of these presentations have like a question section afterwards. That's not what really these presentations are about. Quotations, which you're practicing. That's a great way to start a presentation if the quotation makes sense with your topic. How about suspense? You paint a picture kind of something, you don't know what's happening. And then don't go too long though, because we got to have that resolve into the topic very quickly. But there's another way to we'll get to in a minute. You can actually paint a picture with imagery and maybe other senses, which is creates kind of a little illustration kind of a story too. How about a startling statement? So again, a startling statement is just a surprising thing. It's going to catch your attention, like, oh, did you say that? But it's not necessarily like saying fire or holding a gun. Please don't do those things. And then there's a reference to the occasion. That means essentially like if it's someone's birthday, I'm going to mention the birthday. If it was more likely if it was a wedding, sometimes big occasions, you make a reference to the occasion in a presentation, but might be some other occasion, reasons for that presentation being given. Doesn't apply to us a whole lot. Neither does the next one, a previous speaker, but sometimes a group of people are speaking on the same topic and you might mention it. I mean, if it came up naturally, it would be okay, but it'd be unusual for us. Personal reference. This is a great example, like a little story or revelation about yourself. This, you could use this in the etymology one, but don't confess a crime to us or anything else, really. This is not a confessional. So be careful, don't tell us things you don't want us to know. But a personal reference is a great idea. Making a joke, it's not easy. Humor is really hard to do well. Some of you have already done a little humor. I've been happy to see in your presentations thus far. Humor is a great way to get attention at the start. Visual aids. I'm going to show you I'm going to show the class in person some visual aids today. But in other words, maybe a poster or maybe a thing, maybe an object that you could show. You just have to make sure you have a way not to show it through the entire talk unless you really want them to be looking at that, because you have a thing there, they'll look at that more than looking at you or even listening to you. It can be distracting, but it can get attention. How about a real hypothetical illustration? Try to describe an event, for instance, but don't say the kind of cliched, imagine, close your eyes with me and imagine such and such. That idea, though, okay? Music and movement. You sing something, you do a little dance. If it applies to the presentation, you can do a presentation about opera. You can begin with singing. That would be interesting. Or you're going to do a presentation about tap dance. I would expect in your introduction would probably have some tap dance in it. But that's unusual, but it could happen. And then the conclusions. Look at it, we spent all this time talking about introductions, and that's all there is about conclusions, is this little bit. Honestly, we pay most attention to everything as introductions, and then hopefully you get the body that works out well. But a good way to signal that you want to let the audience know that you're ending, right? You are concluding. So what do? You slow down, you change your tone before you start the conclusion. You maybe double pause before the conclusion, and you could refer back to the introduction. All those things will give the indication that, hey, they're almost done. Should signal without cliches. Try not to say things like in summary, in conclusion. To sum up, I'm going to wrap up by saying, just try to naturally have a pause and then a transition to that information. The conclusion should reinforce your ideas, your main ideas. It's not doing a summary so much, it's use different language to quickly go through those main ideas. So not repetition either. And then a clincher would be the last line. So that's a whole bunch about beginning and ending your presentation. And now another whole topic, another whole handout. Visual aids, excuse me. Visual aids. So the idea is, what kind of visual aids? Most commonly a poster, for instance, or a group of posters, but maybe some other visual aid. Of course, PowerPoint slides or other slides, presentation kind of slides or pictures, images projected on the screen is potentially a visual aid. It is actually a very hard one to use well, and I've given a lot of PowerPoints and that are not very good, or other, not necessarily PowerPoint, but same idea. Other visual digital presentations with way too much text, way too many slides. so on. So there's a lot of issues with it. We're not going to do them in our class. We're going to say that actually this is about if you use any visual aid, it needs to be a physical object. Okay. So it mentions PowerPoint here, but no, we're not doing PowerPoints. Honestly, it's hard to do well. In fact, one of our guidelines, our tips here is to say, don't turn the lights off or down, which is often necessary to see the slide, but automatically puts people to sleep. So the major uses for visual aids are clarification of your topic. So they really have to help the topic, get attention. They can get attention, that's good. And they can also help people retain information, like some slides, some poster that has some key terms or maybe images, for instance. Some tips are always prepare them ahead of time. Now in the classroom lectures are a little different. We do write on the board during a class, but in general, if you were going to write something on the board, you should write it ahead of time, then reveal it, and then have a way of covering it up again if possible. But it'd be better to actually bring posters you can show and then put down again. Practice with them ahead of time. You can't expect, they're like anything else. It's adding a level of complication to your presentation. So you have to practice with them, and you never talk to them, and never turn your back on the audience also. In order to look at them, maintain eye contact while you're doing it. A visual aid is only good as the explanation goes with it. So you don't have them just visual aids create questions in people's minds. Never stand or block them in front of them or block them. Don't ever ask, in the case of, especially for digital presentations, don't ask if you can hear or see. If you have to ask that, obviously you've done your homework to make sure that you are loud enough, you're in the correct place, and that you have prepared your information properly. Here's one idea. You can be your own visual aid. In other words, if I was doing a presentation about the parts of the hand, I could show the hand, right? You can be your own visual aid or do an action or something. But you shouldn't be your own visual aid stand. We did hold the collage. It was sort of a visual aid, right, to get you started. But in general, visual aids should be able to stand up on their own. I have some easels you can use for posters. They're not very good though, but we can try to use something like that if you end up really wanting to use a visual aid in the future. Avoid turning off the lights. Yes, keep them simple. Too much color, writing, or movement is distracting. And there's a rule, which is not listed here, which is called the 60-30-10 rule. 60% of your text on your presentation, on a poster, for instance, should be in one color, the main color, then 30%, no more than 30% in the secondary color, and no more than 10% in the third color. And then probably only 3 colors is all you're going to want. Reveal the visual aids when you show them and then put them away. And that's about it. So there's some other things we could come up with, but I think that's most of it. I think that's most of the presentation I'm going to do today. Let me see if that was it. Review the SPS exercise. If you're going to work on the SPS exercise, and you need any help, please let me know and we can Zoom or meet in person and go over that. So that's enough for today. Otherwise, today in class, we may do some other presentations and stuff. So hopefully you'll be in class soon. See you later. And I'm going to stop my share and stop my recording.